So next we're gonna move on to hearing experiences from our two guest speakers, those being Loluake and Kawe. They've already been very vocal and very helpful with answering the questions. So first we'll have Loluake, who is a sixth-year med student who is stationed at George right now. She has, as she mentioned, she has been involved in Shauku Rural more than once, and in 2019, she and Kawe, along with a few others, helped to organize the Shauku Rural trip to the Eastern Cape. So she will be sharing her experiences from some of these trips and other experiences that she has with rural health. Lolaki, if you should take it away.
Hi. So I partially was gonna prepare for this, and then I just didn't get the chance. So I'm winging it. Don't judge. In terms of rural healthcare, my first exposure to it was when I was young. We used to go to the rural areas a lot, and there used to be like a clinic slightly up the road, which closed, I think, 2003. And then my uncle had a stroke 2004, and then we had to rush him to hospital because there was no nearby healthcare center, and the nearest healthcare center was like an hour and a half away, depending on how fast you're driving and which route you're taking. And so he died en route, and it was then where I think something should have happened. I don't know, this area where my grandparents used to live, there's no healthcare near it anyway. So if you wanted healthcare, even if it's an emergency, you literally had to travel hours depending on where you are. So then I come to UCT. I'm doing medicine. I'm like, okay, let's try see how UCT teaches about rural healthcare, of which they do not. And someone encouraged me to join Shoko. So first year Shoko Rural. I'm there being probably the most eager first year ever. Because what am I doing at Shoko Rural? So I go to Shoko Rural, and it's like a whole new experience. Basically, this rural area, just but the whole area, it's like there's so many clinics, which was new to me because my rural areas, they are no clinics for an hour and a half, but they were clinics every 30 to 40 minutes if you're driving, which isn't that, it's not great, but it's an upgrade, and I was like, wow. And I was like, why am I so impressed by this? Where actually people there should be clinics every maybe 10, 20 minutes, and then hospitals at that kind of distance, but there should be more clinics that are more easily accessible. And a lot of talk is said in UCT about PHC and accessibility to healthcare and how that's a human right and patient rights. But there's very little implementation behind it to ensure people are getting proper and adequate healthcare. So Shoko Rural happens, and I'm loving it. I'm trying to be the change I want to see in the world. We're trying to bring in as much screening as possible, because a lot of the people in the area, they know Shoko Rural as students. They know that we're coming, and our sole purpose is to do pap smears, check people's blood pressure. And they don't normally present to the clinic just to, get those things checked out, because it's you're wasting the sister's time, or you're becoming a burden where there's really sick people who need to see the sister. So when they saw us, they were like, yes, these students, they're here literally for screening purposes, and I need to be screened. So I think we provided a great service. And then RSN, we went on placement for 2 weeks, where you got to work in a rural hospital. And that was something. Rural hospitals are very under-resourced. You have to open blades if you want a pair of scissors, basically. But then the blade you can only use once because there's no scissors inside. if the water is cut off in the area, there's no water even in the hospital. Electricity, if there's load shedding, then there's probably like one generator that can power like a few machines, but that's about it. So we couldn't really keep really sick patients there in case machines, in case there's load shedding. And it's very tight in terms of how many people can come access. Like when it's raining really hard and it's super muddy and slippery, then people can't come. Then the next day after rain, it's full, by like really sick people. And the disease or the burden of disease in rural areas is very different to urban areas. But I think the way rural health is set up, it doesn't cater properly to the different types of burden of diseases. So I keep jumping back and forth, but that's, my mind is linking everything. But yeah, it's been very, very different, especially here in Georgia now. Georgia is very much bougie, even though it's a rural hospital. This hospital is like NSH bougie, and I'm just like, this is, I don't want to say it's not rural, because it drains a lot of like smaller rural hospitals. So it's like the main regional hospital. But I don't know. I'm very much on the fence about whether I can call this rural, or what then is the cutoff for what's considered rural. But it's very understaffed, and students they get worked. You get worked like you get paid, which sucks because we don't get paid. But patients need people. And other things that you don't think about are like cultural things, language barriers, that are pretty bad, like very bad. It's such a different lifestyle to what we're exposed to in Cape Town. Yeah.
May I ask, seeing you're in sixth year now, I had the pleasure of going with you to one of the Shalka rural trips, where you worked at Zitulele Hospital. So you've worked, or can I say student volunteered at GSH, NSH, and all the hospitals here in Cape Town, at George, where you're stationed at now, and you've worked at Zitulele. As a student, seeing the dynamic of everything, what would you say is the major differences between the 3/5, counting all the hospitals you've worked at here in Cape Town?
In GSH in GSH, you see the hierarchy, ne? And it's a lot of people. We're not necessarily fighting for the patients, like for patient rights, or no one's quite standing up for the patients. People, like the healthcare workers that are there, are kind of working there for like another purpose. So like students are working there to get procedures, to get write-ups, to get, like people are working for a process. Interns are there because they have to be there, and they're also fighting for procedures. Regis are just trying to specialize. They're trying to get as much exposure. No one is quite there for like the sake of, well, I don't know, actually, let me not say it like that, but like when you look at it, it seems as though people are there for like other purposes other than serving the patient, which is my experience at GSH. And there's GSH, it could be a great hospital for learning. They could teach you so much, but the people there just aren't willing to teach that much. And then at NSH, I think they take student intern as now as a final year. They take that as a title. So you're student intern and intern, you're along the same planes, except as interns, you can actually like prescribe to things. But as students, we can't prescribe things, but we can write it down in our plan and then ask just someone to just come sign. So at like the smaller regional hospitals, so like your NSH, even George, there's a lot more student involvement, 1. 2, there's a lot more patient advocacy. And 3, you work very well in a team. One thing I've noticed, like the physios and the OTs work very well, even with like the surgeons. And I don't know, maybe it's something I wouldn't think to connect, because of at like Cape Town, it's like, okay, physios and OTs, maybe you'll see them with like internal medicine, but not like surgery patients. But here, physios, OT work well with surgeons. The nurses will talk to you and be like, okay, so this is what's happening. I think this is what we should do to the plan. And then you also like make sense because they're the ones who see the patients probably the most throughout the time. And it's such an MDT, it's such a multidisciplinary team type setting, basically. And it really is, everyone has a role to play, even student interns. So that's quite interesting. That's very interesting. And then, but in terms of resources here in George, the resources aren't that scarce, honestly. Like you'll find what you need somewhere, either in the storage cupboard or it's there. And then for Ezitulele is quite a well-off rural hospital, if I were to say it like that. Like you can see that they're quite short-staffed, and a lot of people that are there are either there just for the love of rural or because they're there for ComServe, and Ezitulele is a comfortable ComServe space. But it's a little bit on the short for resources, short of human resources. So like the doctors, the nursing staff, but they work quite well. And it's very MDT based. Like everyone is involved. If I think at some point they were trying to incorporate traditional healers into their model of health. So that was quite a new experience. I'm trying to think what else about Ezitulele. Ezitulele is a very also well-funded hospital because it's well known. So it's a little bit of an outlier, one of the bougier rural hospitals.
Yeah.
And then Ekanzibe, which was my RSN placement, that one was where you really saw it. So this is kind of what rural health looks like, well, like rural health, where you have about 3-4 interns for like the whole hospital, 1 or 2 MOs, and then consultants. But it isn't like divided according to departments. It's like female ward. So in the mornings, 1 intern goes to female ward, 1 goes to male ward, 1 goes to maternity, 1 goes to labor/theater. Literally, that's it. So all the female patients, whether you're surgery, whether you're gynae, doesn't matter, you in the female ward, and 1 intern sees that. Male patients in the male ward, 1 intern sees that. And then we all come together, you present to the MOs. The MO will come with whoever they want, but they're normally in theater because there's no like anesthesiologist. There's just the MO who is the anesthesiologist at that point. And then you'll just be like, nah, this patient is fine. This patient is like this. Then after all of that, you all go to OPD because now there's a long line of people who were referred from the clinics to the OPD and they need to be seen by the doctors. And since there are no doctors at OPD, they all come to the hospital because that's the next best place. So it's very different. There's no, the only titles we have, I guess, are just the MO and maybe like the specialist if they do come from the regional hospital. And there it's like, there's where the resources are very few and you have to make do with what you have. You literally get so creative because you have to. Sometimes you have to break sterile packs, or like I say, because of the lack of resources, you start misusing the resources that are already there. And it just creates this bad cycle then of more resources being lost unnecessarily. But yeah, those have been my experiences with the different levels.
Thank you so much, Lulake, for sharing that.
Okay, so next we're going to have Ukawe, who is a 5th-year medical student who was also involved in planning the Stoko rural trip in 2019. So over to you, Ukawe. Please tell us about your experiences.
Hi, can you see me? Because I can't see myself.
I can.
Oh, there I am. Hi, guys. Firstly, Lulake, thank you for taking all of my talking points. Thank you. Now I'm just here like, what the hell am I supposed to say? I'm most probably going to speak shorter than her because she took all of my talking points. But my first exposure, I don't think I was, I don't want to say I was exposed to rural health. like I don't think I was exposed to rural health until I came to like Cape Town and joined Shoko Rural. I say that because I lived in East London, and in East London, we have Freya Hospital and we have Isisilia Makiwane Hospital. Those are the only two hospitals we have, and like they're draining sites for a lot of the communities around East London. So for me, those were the two hospitals I experienced ever in my life. And my grandparents, because my dad is a healthcare worker, my grandparents would always come to East London, stay with us, and be treated at Frey or Cecilia Makiwane. So I always knew that there was like, I was always like, why are you coming all this way? But you could go to Imtata. I mean, there's a hospital there, but I mean, my dad was a healthcare worker, so things could be done. And I always just knew that there was something, man. Why are you coming all this way? Why are you driving 2 hours to come and seek healthcare? You know? So when I got the chance to go on Shoko Rural, I was in second year and I was a bit scared because, I mean, what am I going to go do? I'm a second year student. I know nothing. Anatomy is kicking my behind. Physiology is not making sense. I want to drop out. But like I went, and it was such a fun experience. It was such an eye opener for me because I was like, this is where we're needed. As much as like we're needed, okay, at GSH, oh, we needed, I mean, but as much as we're needed like in the urban areas, I feel like we're needed a lot more in rural areas and township areas, because you don't get a lot of healthcare workers there. And you might get, like, most of the times in rural hospitals, you have nurses, but everyone else isn't there. Like, you won't have health and rehab specialists there. You hardly have doctors there. So it's after experiencing Shoko Rural, the drive has always been, I need to go back. I need to give back. And the more I was exposed to rural health, whenever I went home, so where my dad grew up in Ngqeleni, which is about like 3 hours from Zitulele. So whenever I go back there, I always notice that on our drive there, there's one clinic. And in our car, when we're going there, it takes us about maybe 30 minutes to an hour to get to where we stay. And the clinic, if it takes me 30 minutes to an hour to get close to the clinic in a car, I can't imagine how much longer it takes to walk. And those roads there, it's gravel roads, all gravel road until you get back into the city, it's all gravel road. So for me, rural health is really about going back and helping the people that my parents grew up with, their children and their children's children, because the one thing about poverty, it's a cycle. Living in a rural area, it's a cycle. Unless one person gets out, you're all stuck in the cycle of having to deal with things, but in a rural area. So my cousin, I know she had a stroke when she was really little. She was about 10, and she stays with my gran. And accessing healthcare for her is very difficult because she's a 40-year-old. She's 40. She's been, not able to get. I feel like if she was able to get the care that she needed at the time, she would be a functioning member of society, because our family is not like, we can help, like we help each other. So I feel like if she was able to get access to an OT, if she was able to get access to physios, it would have been better. I mean, she needs access to doctors, but in order for her to be able to adjust to her new condition, in a rural area, those are the types of people she needs more than a doctor. So I think for me, rural health and my experience of it has always been about where can I help and what can I do? But there's always that frustration of a condo, like, where are the resources and where are the human resources? We are the human resources, but we can't get posts there. It's you know, it's kind of like you want to do it, but then you see the conditions and you're like, will I be able to rise to the occasion and be as selfless as I think I can be? So that was what I really enjoyed about going to rural. It was the questions that you ask yourself when you've had an experience in rural healthcare is, I came here because I had something that said, go and do rural, but then you get back and you're like, can I? You come back and you're asking yourselves more questions because, am I actually able to go and make a difference? Because there's a lot, but I feel like one doctor, one physio, one sister, one OT, one audiologist, one of each can make more of a difference than not actually being there at all. So like Lolwake said, Zitulele is very, like, it's nice, but the rest of the hospitals that are rural are not as nice. And I think it's what I enjoy about RSN is that you get to experience the hospitals that are also not so nice. You will go to Zitulele and be like, yeah, this is what I want to do. But then you go on another RSN placement and you're like, actually, it's tough. But I think as healthcare professionals, we need to want to stay on after ComServe. I feel maybe I don't know if government sees that there are people that want to stay on, they'll open more posts. But if we don't want to stay on, we want to run back to the city, then who are they going to open the post to if everyone's running back? So I think another big part of rural health is just advocacy and just wanting to be there wholeheartedly. And yeah, that's been my experience of rural. So
okay, I have one quick question before we have to move on. My question is, sorry, when you went with RSN and with Shauko to volunteer at the clinics, the different clinics that you said, you mentioned how Zitulele is, more resourced than some of the other clinics you've been to. Did you find that you as students and sometimes you as clinical students had to help pick up the slack from the nurses? Not slack in terms of they weren't doing enough, but slack in terms of there's so much that needs to be done.
I went both times and I was a preclinical student, so I've never experienced rural health as a clinical student. So, but I think it's like Ulolwake when she was saying that when we got there for Shoko, they knew that, okay, you know what, at least for a week, we're gonna have X amount of women who get screening, who get pap smears. And so I don't want to, it's picking up slack, but if the sisters were able to do it, they would have done it. There's just not enough people. There's not enough resources. There's not enough time. Because
I think slack was a bad word to use, sorry.
No. Yeah. Don't worry about it. It's again, the human resources. There's not enough people. If it's just sisters running the clinic, we're not going to get to the screening part. So I think for us, it's just important, I think, to have these types of societies that go out and we can, as students, you're learning. So you having to do 20 pap smears in a day, it's part of your learn. And by the time you need to do pap smears by yourself as an intern or wherever you're going to do ComServe, you've already done 20, you've done so many, you are now proficient. So I think I would try to spin it and say, when you are a student going on a rural placement, think about it more as a learning experience and bettering your confidence, so that when you are dealing with other patients, you're confident and you feel like you can, do what needs to be done. So yeah, there's just no human resources really. As much as there's no like material resources, there's no human. There is human resources, but there's no posts. But yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Kawe, for your experiences. Even if Lolwake stole your talking points, you still had quite a bit to get through. Thank you so much. Sorry. Next, we'll be showing the patient video that our very own Esinago took in Kunu, which is located in rural Eastern Cape, where she comes from. Esinago interviewed the patients as they were waiting a service from the local clinic. So I will quickly share my screen just so I'll quickly share my screen, sorry.
Okay, funka ndazi uba usuka ndawoni ngoku. Apha ngaphezulu. Ubuhamba ngeenyawo. Uzothini apha ekliniki? Okay, treatment. So uqala ukuza apha. Okay. Kwakunjani the last time uze apha indlela ababephethe ngayo nesi?
Hayi kwakubhetele kodwa ke akulibhetele apha ezinye ngoba alidingoyo.
Banamaxesha. Oh.
Siya-understand
Makhabi.
kodwa ubona amaxesha uba hayi alidingoyo and noko siyanceda.
Is the video supposed to be black?
Mkhadi,
Yes.
could you please? I mean, the picture is black. It's not showing the subtitle.
Oh, okay. Let me try again.
Please.
Is that better?
Yeah, we can see now.
Okay, let me start it again.
Ndawoni ngoku. Okay, funka ndazi uba usuka ndawoni ngoku.
Usuka apha.
Apha ngaphezulu. Okay. Ubuhamba ngeenyawo. Uzothini apha ekliniki? Okay, treatment. So uqala ukuza apha. Okay. Kwakunjani the last time uze apha indlela ababephethe ngayo nesi?
Hayi kwakubhetele kodwa ke akulibhetele apha ezinye ngoba alidingoyo.
Banamaxesha. Oh.
Siya-understand
Bambala.
kodwa ubona amaxesha uba hayi alidingoyo and noko siyanceda.
Kodwa abekho. So nithunyelwe ividiyo sini.
Kodwa awukuthunyelwa uzibale nje kongayo qale lithunyelwa kodwa ungathunyelwa and ube ungancedwanga.
So lake lakhona ixesha walinda apha ekliniki kwafuneka uphinde uhambe ungakhange ubone. Oh, okay. Xa benicacisela ngamayeza banicacisela kakuhle, like you understand xa bekucacisela ngamayeza indlela owathatha ngayo.
Hayi ke
abalela ntoni? Kodwa ke mnye so andinokwazi ungena nonke. Okay. Apha ekliniki nge-weekends kuyavalwa ndithi. Ini-affecta njani nalo nto? Okugulele nge-weekend ufuna uze ekliniki but ube ungakwazi ngenxa yoba kuvaliwe. Sengokugqibela ngoku no.
Ngoba mhlawumbi ukuhamba into ithetha ukuthi ukuhamba ungancedanga. Xa ngakuvale kunale ngxaki apho izileyo. Uba uhambile enzele uncedile uziphiwe kodwa ubona uba yona ikwaphela ingawunyamezelelele le nto izileyo phaa.
Xa njengoba kuzonetha ayikho enye indawo abanibeka kuyo okanye nizohlala ngaphandle.
Sinethe kaloku
Okay, so that was the video that I took with there was a few women who were sitting outside and they were waiting to be let inside. The picture is not so clear. I thought it was going to be more clear than that. I had asked to do videos, but obviously they didn't allow me, and they also didn't want their names to be exposed as well. So that was the best I could come up with. And yeah, the audio as well is not so perfect because it was the weather was about to rain, so the weather was really shaky, so that's why you can't really hear what's happening. So I hope that video answers your questions. I mean the answers. I hope that it sorry. I hope that it answers your questions. Yes, the ones that you had before we gave you those questions, and I hope you were not too far from the answers. And yeah, we have come to the end of our talk now. I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed it, and thank you so much for being so cooperative and answering, the questions. And even though we didn't go according to plan with the breakout rooms, but thank you, you guys.